All right, I'm gonna watch that the entire time now. All right.
Okay. Here we go.
All right, and back to the. All right. To begin this debate, I want to start with a major argument that is the harming of disenfranchising voters. The harms of disenfranchising voters. In this case, we are addressing the issue of disenfranchising the voter, and in this case, the voter is the felons. The group of felons that we can address is people from all sides of felonies, from DUIs all the way up to murders, and as we will continue to see, very harsh and critical crimes. And though these groups of people may seem like monsters as they're made out to be in society, they are not. These are people that can be reformed and can come out on top. And I believe that completing one's sentence is paying their debt to society. Serving in prison is serving your penance, and you should be able to vote after you've served your prison term, after you've served your penance to our society. The idea of a prison term is to reform the person in prison, to reform the prisoner, so that once you re-enter society, you can successfully become a functioning member once again. The information I'm going to bring forth first is from the National Conference of State Legislature, the NCSL. In 18 states, felons lose their voting rights during incarceration, as well as for a period of time after, typically either while on parole or probation or more. Voting rights are also automatically restored after this time period. Former felons may also have to pay outstanding fees, restitution, or other forms of monetary compensation before their voting rights are restored. In 11 states, one such being Florida, felons lose their voting rights indefinitely for certain crimes, or they require a governor's pardon in order for voting rights to be restored. They face additional waiting periods after completion of their sentence, and oftentimes they require additional action before voting rights can be restored. These states, as listed in a data table, continuing forward, that I won't be able to share with you since it's digital, but these different states, these 11 states, completely take away the voting rights of felons and require significant jumping through hoops, as you may, for felons to be able to vote. And I don't think this is a fair argument. This is a definition of terms, right? So we have felons, as it would be, and this is a vast group of felons. And though they make a good point with certain felons in 18 states, certain felons are available to vote after certain periods of times, that these felons are being disenfranchised. Certain groups, especially the ones that are in for something as simple as a DUI, which can happen because alcoholism runs in their family, or they have made a serious mistake and have realized their penance, realized their sorry, I'm blanking for the word, but they've realized what they've done in prison, and they have thought about this. And if we're not allowing these people to re-enter society and rejoin as functioning members, then we're not giving them the rights that they deserve as American citizens. The idea of prison is reform, and if we're not treating it as a reform system, then what are we doing with our tax dollars? So, prisons sometimes even have therapists or psychologists on site in certain locations to help these people come back. And though this is not the case across the board, there are tax dollars being put into the prison system so that people may come out and be able to re-enter society and rejoin. As President Barack Obama said in 2015, specifically on July 14th, on Thursday, I will be the first sitting president to visit a federal prison. And I'm going to shine a spotlight on this issue because while the people in our prisons have made some mistakes, and sometimes big mistakes, they're also Americans. And we have to make sure that as they do their time and pay back their debt to society, that we are increasing the possibility that they can turn their lives around. If folks have served their time and they've re-entered society, they should be able to vote. President Obama makes a fair point here. The idea is that if you serve your time in prison, you should be able to turn your life around and pursue the American dream. People make grave mistakes. People make terrible mistakes sometimes, This does not mean that one cannot turn around and make a complete 180 from where they were at one point in life. Oftentimes, felony sentences can be a very, very long time, upwards of 5, 10, 20, 30 years. So this amount of time should be considerably enough for people to ponder on what they've done wrong and turn around their lives. And that's 5 minutes.
Okay. Do you believe that felons should be allowed to purchase guns?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
I don't know. It's an interesting question.
Okay.
Do you want a yes or no?
Yes.
I don't think so, but in certain cases, yes. Depends on the felony.
Why not? For those who you don't believe should be allowed to purchase guns, why don't you?
Well, I think if you had a gun-related crime, I don't think you should be allowed to purchase it, but I don't think that would stop you if you had a gun-related crime in the past, but that's a different argument to be made.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so noting that you think that some do deserve the right to buy a gun, but some don't. For those that don't, why not if they've paid their dues?
Right. If they've paid their dues, it depends on what crime was committed. So, I mean, someone can go to prison for a hit, not a hit and run, but for hitting someone while under the influence. And I don't think that's the same as someone who shot up a Walmart on Black Friday because they felt like they were being assaulted or something like that. I don't think that's the same kind of argument to be made here.
Okay. With noting the fact that you believe that those who come out of prison are turning a new leaf, as you stated in your previous argument. They pay their dues, served their time. Even those with gun-related crimes, that implies that you don't. Does that imply? No, I want clarification. Do you truly feel as though they've been properly rehabilitated if you don't trust the gun?
What was that?
Do you still trust their
You
judgment?
cut out. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Did you get that, or
No, you cut out like as you started that question.
no worries? I think I'm a little over time though.
No, you're good. Go for it.
Okay. Do you feel as though even if they committed a gun-related crime, do you feel as though you can trust their judgment after the time that they've served?
It's an interesting question. In regards to this debate, I don't think so. It depends. It truly just depends on the situation. But I think if they've been reformed and they've served their sentence, there is much more chance that I would trust them than someone who's currently in prison, or has just gone into prison, just gone into lockup. They'll do a whole lot to you sitting in a cold cell. I truly believe that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then go drive what? You have 6 minutes now.
Okay. Perfect. The right to vote for convicted felons is a notion that is constantly debated federally and locally. The negative stands against convicted felons' right to vote for the following reasons. The prison system is currently not a system that truly rehabilitates. Noting extremely high recidivism rates, it is important to note the work that the US still has to do with the prison reform system. Again, no, not again, because this is our first time debating this. Voting is a privilege and not an absolute right of citizenship. States have the right to decide whether or not convicted felons have the right to vote. Ex-convicts should also not vote because they've proven themselves to be untrustworthy. Voting is a privilege and not an absolute right of citizenship. States have the right to decide whether or not convicted felons have the right to vote. In a 2002 speech by the US Senate, Senator Mitch McConnell said the following: "Voting is a privilege properly exercised at the voting booth, not from a prison cell. States have a significant interest in reserving the vote for those who have abided by the social contract that forms the foundation of a representative democracy. And that is what we are, a representative democracy. Felons are those who have violated a social contract. They violated it when they committed the crime, a heinous crime, to which I might add, because felonies are heinous crimes against humanity. We're talking about rapists, murderers, robbers, and even terrorists. Do we want to see convicted terrorists who seek to destroy this country voting in elections? Do we want to see jailhouse blocks banding together to oust sheriffs and government officials who are tough on crime? Those who break our laws should not have a voice in electing those who make and enforce our laws. Those who break our laws should not dilute the votes of law-abiding citizens. Next, ex-convicts should not vote because they have proven themselves to be untrustworthy. President and General Counsel of the Center for Equal Opportunity Debate argued, "We don't let children vote, for instance, or non-citizens or the mentally incompetent. Why? Because we don't trust them and their judgment." So the question is, do criminals belong in that category? And I think the answer is clearly yes. People who commit serious crimes have shown that they are not trustworthy. Those who have a good sense of judgment know not to murder, not to commit robberies, not to steal and lie. That's good judgment. And those who unfortunately commit those crimes, we can never understand because, again, they have poor judgment. So why should they act as a voice for those around them as well? Losing the right to vote should have been considered before they committed the crime. It's difficult to prove, but for some, it is possible that losing the right to vote and the knowledge that they'd lose the right to vote could keep individuals from committing the crime. Again, that's not proven. However, social contract theory, these individuals are violating a social contract as a citizen of the US. So Fordham Urban Law Journal discusses the social contract theory and how the notion justifies the disenfranchisement of convicted felons. As a policy justification, Locke's social contract theory has withstood the test of time. It served a rationale for the enactment of felon disenfranchisement laws in the past and remains a compelling argument today. When someone commits a crime, he commits it not just against the victim, but against our entire society. Protests that time served is enough and that society should prioritize the rehabilitation and reintegration of felons should fall on deaf ears. Opponents of disenfranchisement claim the inability to vote hurts felons and readmittance into a law-abiding society, yet they neglect to explain why the tonic of voting did not curtail felons from committing crimes initially. In my opinion, it should have. Okay. In this speech, we went over the fact that voting is a privilege and not an absolute right of citizenship. Ex-convicts have proven themselves to be untrustworthy, and losing the right to vote should have been considered before committing the crime. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Now I have a 2-minute affirmative cross-examination, and I wanted to ask you, first of all, I'm going to set up a little situation here. You're 27, 28 years old. You've just had your first child, and things aren't going so well for you. Things aren't on the up and up. And you've had a rough night. You just got off of work, and you drove to the bar that's across the street. And your car was at work, so you drove it to the bar. And you go in, and you're late on your mortgage. Your wife's mad at you. Your husband's mad at you. Your partner's mad at you. And things aren't going too well at home. You got to feed the kids. You got to take care of your family. You have a little bit too much to drink. You can't afford an Uber because you're already behind on your mortgage. And so in your inebriated state, you decide, all right, I only live 5 blocks down the road. I'm going to get in the car and just make it home. I'll drive slow, I'll drive in the right lane. Well, we know how that goes. You hit somebody, you go into jail, you're driving under the influence, and luckily they survive, but now you're going to prison because you hit somebody while under the influence. Now, I want to ask you, do you think this person deserves to lose their right to vote? Do you think they were intentionally trying to harm that person and they were trying to do something so heinous to society that they should not be ever in their entire lives, their young lives, be allowed to vote again the next 30 to 40 to 50 years that they may live?
See, that's a great question, and my answer to that is that I wouldn't have gone to the bar in the first place because I have a child at home and I'm not going to waste my money drinking and become inebriated at a bar. After all, I have a child that I have to feed, and going to a bar, that would be poor judgment. And getting behind a wheel, that is poor judgment. And yeah, if that is where my mindset is, maybe I shouldn't be allowed to vote because I would never do something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just think this came from the idea of mistakes happen. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. All right. I think we're at 2 minutes, so we'll call that there. I have 3 minutes now to rebut your original statement, and so I'm going to address also what I questioned you on. So if we're saying that mistakes, whether they happen or not, regardless of how we feel about that situation portrayed, you have to pay the price for it for eternity, really, not eternity, but for the rest of your life in America. I don't think that is consolidating. I don't think that's considering the American dream and the American mantra at hand. We all want to believe in the greater good. We want to believe that people come here and work hard, and things can happen, but you can always move forward and turn a new leaf in America. That's the really is the American dream. You can start from anywhere. And I don't think that what you were saying, right, that you lose your privilege. I don't think America is a place for privileges. I think America is a place where you come and you work hard, and you do your work, you grind, and you can succeed. And so I don't think stepping in to say that that you can just take that away from someone, especially at a federal level, when there are places like Florida. We have 1.5 million. I believe I used this number earlier. I'm not quite sure, but if not, it can step out of the debate. But 1.5 million people, up to 1.5 million people in Florida, are like the population of Miami-Dade, essentially, aren't allowed to vote because they are convicted felons throughout the state. If you condense that number down into one area, it would be the population of Miami-Dade. So imagine if Miami-Dade, the entire county, couldn't vote. And I don't think that's fair, especially on a federal level. Like I said, it takes away from voters, it takes away from people that have opinions and that can come out of a reform system. The idea, again, as I'm going to restate, the idea of prison is that we can come out and prisoners can take themselves out of a situation, having realized what they've done, paying their penance to society, and step out and turn a new leaf. And I think if we're treating these people as if they've, basically committed a atrocity against the world, I don't think it's fair. And yes, there is a scale to things. Yes, I understand that there are misdemeanors and there are other levels of crime, but a felony conviction for driving under the influence should not be compared the same as a felony conviction for murdering people and for taking a life. I think those things should be, I think the law should be reformed and should be adjusted as we have in California. There are certain restrictions on your felony that if you come out, I believe certain felons aren't allowed to vote after, but most are once they've served their sentence. And so I think laws like that need to be instituted across the states. Otherwise, we're disenfranchising and taking away from voters that could potentially change elections. And that's my 3 minutes.
Okay.
So 5.
Okay. So I'd like to address what you just said. Essentially, the fact that oh God, I completely forgot what you just said. Okay.
You're good.
So in the cross-examination, I posed the question as to whether or not you believed that those who have committed felonies should be able to purchase a gun. You mentioned that it is a case by case basis. However, with this knowledge in mind, I don't believe that you truly believe that their slate is being truly wiped clean. In fact, it does inhibit a sense of the fact that these people have paid their dues. For those who have committed a crime related to a gun, they've likely, served a 25 years, a long life sentence, or sorry, not a life sentence, a long sentence in general. So with this in mind, if you truly believe that they're coming out of it reformed and ready to re-enter society, live out the American dream, they should be allowed to purchase a gun. But you don't think that they should purchase a gun. And I mean, therefore, I don't truly believe that that I think that this example proves the fact that these individuals who have committed general crimes against society, we're talking murder, we're talking a robbery, we're talking, we're talking so much, we're talking child predators, awful crimes. These are felonies. And I understand that a DUI should not be put in, it should not be put in the same category. At the moment it is, and that's a completely different debate. That relates to what should be categorized as a misdemeanor and what should be categorized as a felony. As it stands right now, overall, felons should not be allowed to vote at the moment. Reform for this should come later. However, right now, I still stand by the fact that felons should not be allowed to vote. That includes those who have committed DUIs, or those who have DUIs, because they have displayed a sense of poor judgment, quite frankly. Again, voting is a privilege, and when they committed their crime against society, whether that's whoever they murdered, whoever they violated, this is their punishment, and they lose a lot of privileges, and this is one of them. Unfortunately, as it stands, they have proven themselves to be untrustworthy. Those who can vote are they're not convicted felons at the moment. So the fact that convicted felons are able to vote in an election, as previously stated, this is diluting the votes of law-abiding citizens. And then losing the right to vote should have been considered before they committed the crime. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. To conclude my argument today, I would like to first address what you just said in regards to felons being given guns. And yes, I do understand where you're coming from with your argument, but I don't think comparing felons being given guns or being allowed to purchase guns are the same as a felon voting. You can kill somebody with a gun. You can take a life with a gun. You cannot take a life with a vote. A vote is a right instituted in every American, and I think disenfranchising that right is something that is absolutely unacceptable. And then I think that comes to the terms of our argument. We're arguing, as I defined the terms, about the disenfranchising of felony voters. And I don't think your comparison of guns to votes is quite the same. And I do understand where you're coming from, but in the sense of our debate, I absolutely don't think it should be considered and don't think it's a fair argument. Continuing forward, I also want to address what you said about the categorization of felons. And yes, that is a different argument. That is a different argument to be made. But in the examples that I use, you cannot take away the votes of people that have committed crimes, even some serious and heinous crimes. They still serve their sentence and come out and should deserve to vote, because regardless of how serious a crime, a vote at the end of the day is not something that's going to impact the life of somebody else. It's not going, yeah, in a way it will, but not in the same way that a gun will, or other things that you lose when you come out of prison with a felon sentence. And there are things that you do lose when you've committed felonies, and that is an entirely separate issue to be addressed. But when it comes down to something as inalienable as the right to vote, I don't think we can be the ones to say that no, you should not be able to vote. I don't think voting is a privilege for certain people. I don't think voting is something that we should take away from people that have paid their penance to society. As I first stated in my opening argument, a prison term is a penance you're paying to society. It is your debts to society, and once you serve it, you truly do, I believe, as we have finally allowed in California, I do believe you've paid your dues, and you should be allowed to vote as every other American is allowed to vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it.